Governor Gretchen Whitmer maps out priorities for the next 2 years. We'll talk about Michigan's future and her own. Plus, President Biden's legacy and what the incoming Trump administration could mean for our state. Today is Sunday, January 19th, 2025, and this is Flashpoint. Hi there, and welcome to Flashpoint. I'm Christy McDonald. So glad that you're with me on this Sunday as we head into a really cold week here in Detroit. There is a lot going on. The negotiations for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, President Joe Biden giving his farewell address, and then the inauguration for President Donald Trump is tomorrow, after a busy week of cabinet nominees making their way through the confirmation process. Well, we're thinking about how a Trump presidency and policies will specifically impact us here in Michigan. We have a great roundtable that will debate that, and that is just ahead. And you better believe that Governor Gretchen Whitmer is thinking how she works with the Trump administration. She's also talking about working with Republicans in the state legislature to solve some road problems and set new priorities for the new year. I caught up with her while she toured the Detroit Auto Show this week. We go one-on-one. And then, what will we doom scroll while waiting in line if TikTok goes away? Stay put. Flashpoint starts right now. We are starting off this Sunday with my conversation with Governor Gretchen Whitmer. She spent time at the Detroit Auto Show this week and gave a speech laying out her priorities for 2025. We talked budget surplus, cross-party politics, and if she'll endorse in the governor's race. New year, new agenda for 2025, and one of the things is that we are running out of road funding. What's the biggest concern here?
Well, you know, have had a long-term need for road funding. We've been able to do a lot of great things with the bonding plan, but that doesn't last forever. We still need a long-term solution, and I'm really glad that the new Speaker of the House has said this is important to him. It's important to me. I want to get it done, so part of the vision is that's got to be a component of us strengthening our state infrastructure.
Let's talk a little bit about what else is on your agenda, and especially when we heard the news that the state has a budget surplus, about $770 million. Good news to have, but sometimes, okay, where do we put it?
Right, and you know, it is a lot of money, and yet when you think about the needs that we have when it comes to infrastructure, part of what I talked about today was, you know, when we think about a long-term road plan, it's going to require some cuts. It's going to require some revenue. Like, it's not one or the other. You don't fix something with all cuts or all new revenue. We ask people to tighten their belts. We need to do the same. So it's going to, I think, give us an opportunity to make some investments, but we still got big things we got to get accomplished.
So far that money is on the table. That's not going to be going into a rainy day fund or anything like that?
Well, I'm writing the budget now. I will be presenting it in a couple of weeks, and that's just one part of what we're considering as we write the next year budget. But a lot of it's one time, so it's not like it's ongoing.
Exactly. Let's look a little bit at the legislative agenda, Ted. Now we have a Republican majority in the House. They're looking at several things as they come down the line. Sick leave, the minimum wage that is going to be changing in February as well, and maybe some changes to FOIA. What do you think about what they're working on so far?
Well, you know, they're just getting started, and I know that everyone's, you know, at least the majority in the House now are. Many of them are traveling out to Washington, D.C. for the inauguration next week, but when they get back, I'm hopeful that we can start really negotiating on some big things for Michigan. Part of it is infrastructure, part of it is economic development. We've got to continue to compete and make sure that we land not just plants, but all the different pieces that go into an auto ecosystem. And that's really what I talked about today here at the Auto Show in my Road Ahead address.
People will say, gosh, how can you work with Republicans now? It seems like things are so fraught on either side. I've heard you say before, look, I've worked with Republicans all my career. This isn't going to be any different coming off of the trifecta that you had for the last 2 years.
Yeah, you know what? My first two years as governor, Donald Trump was president. My last 2 years as governor, Donald Trump's president. I've worked with him before. I will work with anyone who is serious about solving problems and making Michiganders' lives better. People of Michigan elected Donald Trump twice and me twice within 2 years of one another. I think it's important that we stay focused on the needs of the people of Michigan, and so long as that centers us, we're going to be able to find common ground.
So inauguration is on Monday. What do you think the impact is going to be of a Trump presidency on Michigan specifically?
Well, you know, I think there's an opportunity here. The president has said that he wants car manufacturing to remain in the United States. I agree. The conversation around tariffs concerns me, and here's why. Treating Canada like China, they're very different. And when you think about North America and the auto ecosystem, a lot of things we produce go back and forth over this border over and over again. A tariff on that would increase costs for American consumers and could cost us Michigan jobs. And so my hope is that as the president further formulates his plan with regard to leveling the playing field with China, that we don't treat our friends in Canada the same, because it would have dire consequences for our auto sector.
You had a bit of a contentious relationship with President Trump when he was in office the first time around. Do you make a call? Do you open the lines of communication? Or, how do you see the relationship playing out now over the next 2 years?
Yeah, I've done some outreach with folks who are going to be part of the administration. I'll look forward to seeing the president in person when I go with the other governors for dinner at the White House next month. That is, some people don't attend when their party's not in the White House. I don't buy into that. I went the 2 years that Donald Trump was president, my first 2 years. I went all 4 that President Biden was president, and I will go the last 2 that I'm in office where Donald Trump's president. My job is to serve the people of Michigan. It's never about serving yourself. It's never about serving a political party. It's about doing what you need to do for the people in your state, and that's what I'm going to stay focused on.
Before I let you go, I have to ask a little bit about politics. We saw the first Republican announce that he is going to be running for governor, Eric Nesbitt. We know that Mike Duggan is going to be running as an independent. We haven't seen any Democrats step forward. Are you going to be endorsing in the governor's race?
I'm going to have a lot of friends who are running.
I was just going to say.
I'm going to stay focused on doing my job and making sure that Michigan is in its strongest shape as we can be whenever I turn it over to whomever comes next. So I am grateful to have a lot of good friends who are running. We'll see what happens, but I got a job to do and I'm going to stay focused on it.
You do have a job to do, and you have always maintained that focus and talked about it, but there has to be so much noise nationally surrounding every move that you're making now, because 2 years is not very long when you look in the scope of everything. Are people from the Democratic Party talking to you about, Governor Whitmer, what would you like to do in 2 years?
No, and you know what? I'm not having any of those conversations.
You're not answering that question?
I'm not. No, they're not talking. No one's calling me up. I'm not having any of those conversations. I'm staying focused. 4 years is a long ways away. I love what I do. I've never been lured to Washington, D.C. at any juncture. And I want to run through the tape. I want to do everything I can in this role, and then who knows what comes next. I may just go walk the earth for a year.
I mean, take it all in. But walking the floor here today and seeing all these vehicles, it's got to flash you back to your first car.
Yeah. Oh, and what is going to be my first car after being governor when I start driving again?
This?
There's a lot of cool ones to look at.
Don't take that on 96 unless it's all smooth, right?
Well, I'm working on that too.
Okay. Governor Whitmer, thanks for being with me. My thanks to the governor. And as for working with House Republicans, not a really enthusiastic response to her Wednesday speech. And just to keep you up to date, the state house could vote on bills as early as next week to change the minimum wage and sick leave policies. So the House has their own version, but so does the Senate when it comes to the tip wage and businesses under 50 people in sick leave. We're going to be watching that for you this week. Well, coming up next, the official start to a Trump presidency, plus President Biden's farewell, and where are we all doom scrolling if TikTok is gone? Our roundtable is here. Jill, Dennis, Adolph, Caitlin, stay with me. Welcome back. There is a lot to talk about this week as we head into President Trump's inauguration on Monday in D.C. and the tone and the impact here in Michigan. We have our roundtable in place today, so make sure you say hello to Jill Alper, Democratic political consultant at Alper Strategies and Media. Next to her is Dennis Darnoy, Republican strategist at Densar Consulting. Over on my left is Caitlin Buss, the deputy editorial page editor at the Detroit News, and then Adolph Mongo, political consultant, podcaster here in Detroit. It's good to see all of you. We've all determined that we can no longer say Happy New Year. We're in the thick of everything.
Yes, we agree.
But before we start looking forward and the inauguration on Monday of President Trump, I want to take a look back, I think, at the administration, and we saw the farewell address from President Joe Biden this week. I saw some numbers. CNN did a poll on Wednesday saying he had a 36% approval rating, and James Carville came out and said he is going to be remembered as the guy who stayed too long. And I want to start with you, Jill, and all the assessments and and I think the essays that we're seeing being written about Joe Biden and his goodbye, and get what your thoughts were on this week in the farewell address.
Sure. I think Joe Biden has served our nation admirably, really, for 50 years. And he has said himself that he believes, and I think a lot of people do believe who've been close enough on the work, that his presidency will be remembered probably more kindly over the decades to come. For instance, the Public Works project alone, I'll just give you one example, is as large as anything that, FDR moved forward, but it was postponed, in these days. They didn't let it begin work until the middle of his term. They didn't want anything to take effect. And so in many ways, it took our country to a better place in terms of tone, got us through the pandemic, and many, many other things. Highest job growth among small businesses, 16.1 million new jobs, highest growth rate. People are concerned about the price of eggs, as they should be.
Yeah,
so.
But Dennis, so we look at some of maybe the executive orders near the end and some of the different things that he's done. Has he set the right tone as he leaves and everything that he's done?
Well, I mean, from a Republican standpoint, you'd say that he's put up some roadblocks unnecessarily for the incoming administration. As you mentioned, there are a lot of people that look at his presidency and right now do not vote it favorably. And that goes across, party lines. There are Democrats who are displeased with how he ran his presidency. I agree with Jill that it takes some time. And maybe in the rearview mirror, some people will look a little bit more favorably on some of the things that he did. But right now, if you're Republicans, you're looking at some of these executive orders and saying you're just putting up unnecessary barriers that are going to delay our ability to come in and govern.
Adolph, the messaging, though, that the president gave this week, you saw it. What ran through your mind?
He got a raw deal from the Democratic Party. Listen, Trump understood that the president has some issues. And he profited from it, and all the folks around the president did not tell him he didn't have any clothes on. And they pushed him, and then all of a sudden, at the last minute, you push him out. And the way they pushed him out, the vice president wasn't ready to jump in. She's been frozen for 3-4 years. What has she done? And this is what we got. So, I like Joe Biden. He was a good president, but he was like my father. You get a certain age, you start losing a little bit, you take the keys, he can't drive anymore. And those folks around him that saw that, and they pretended that, he's going to be a strong candidate. And we saw during that debate that this wasn't a Joe Biden of 50 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 4 years ago. One thing they did with President Reagan, they hid him for 2 years. They couldn't hide Biden. The whole world saw that on that stage that night. They said, yes, we got to do something, so they panicked.
I think when you look at legacy, though, and Caitlin, something that's happened this week is you had the Biden administration working with the incoming Trump administration to help broker that ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas and what's happening in Gaza.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's been great to see. I think we can hope for, even given how Trump's first term ended, we might be able to hope for a return to some level of normalcy. I mean, I think we've seen parties certainly trying to work together more ever since the election. I mean, Trump had such a gravitational pull in pulling not only world leaders, but, Democrats somewhat to his side and saying, okay, we're going to work together on some of this stuff. The confirmation hearings have been honestly more civil than I thought they would be. And even with this TikTok ban, we'll see what happens with that. There's a lot of opportunity, especially on the world stage, for them to work together. And so hopefully if Trump even does, a little bit of what he said he's going to do, we'll see some stability and some order back.
You talked about the confirmation hearings that happened this week. Jill, I want to turn over to you because we have been thinking about what another Trump presidency term will be like since election night in November. Now we're finally at the point of the inauguration on Monday. What have you seen leading up to this point that maybe surprises you or concerns you or says, oh gosh, I didn't consider this or I didn't think this was going to happen?
I think people have to buckle up their seatbelts here. There's been some time since the election where people are, okay, this is going to happen, but people may start start being deported from their homes less than a week from now. I don't think there'll necessarily be stability. I think there'll be a lot of chaos. Potentially here. The ACA, President Trump tried to get rid of. There are 91,000 people in Michigan who are beneficiaries of the ACA who need their health care in order to live. So I'm concerned, I think, is the answer. And with the nominations and the confirmations, what we're seeing for the most part are people who are either extreme, not subject area experts, or haven't run anything before. So what I'm hearing is that people are very concerned about what comes next week.
I mean, when we look at next week, right after Monday, Dennis, what are some of your thoughts or concerns that you see coming up?
Well, my thoughts are, he made a lot of promises about what he's going to do on day one. Tomorrow's the inauguration, and then after that, his administration begins. So let's see what he's able to deliver. I think you have to differentiate what he can do by executive order versus, relying on Congress. I'd like to see Republicans get their act together and figure out how they're going to do the reconciliation package. Is it one big bill? Is it two bills? So those are the things that we're going to look at. And I mean, as every administration comes in, I think you give them the benefit of the doubt. You say, okay, let's see, you have a new opportunity to do something. You trust, but you verify. And I think that's where we are with this Trump second presidency is, okay, there are a lot of things you've said. Let's see if you can now deliver on that.
Yeah, Jill brings a very good point about immigration and what we might be seeing in these next couple of weeks. And I want to talk specifically about the impact of policies on Michigan when we come right back in just a couple of minutes. So stay with me. We'll be right back. Welcome back. All right, Caitlin, I'm going to start with you. What do you think the impact of a Trump presidency is going to be in Michigan specifically? When Jill was talking specifically about immigration, what are some other things that are coming to mind?
On immigration or other, I think it'll be huge. I mean, and this was something voters, said they wanted to see a change on. I mean, we've seen the impact of immigration, not only specifically on criminal immigrants who are here, with confusing asylum statuses, other undetectable statuses that have come into our communities. This has been an issue in Oakland County with crime. I think we've heard from law enforcement. Not all of them are going to be on board with these new policies, but there will be some who will work with the Trump administration on whatever particularly that looks like. I agree there is, a bit of trepidation about what exactly that's going to look like and the impact it could leave. But I think across the whole, people want to see more safety and security in the border, and they've seen it impact us here in Michigan. And so they're looking forward to some of those changes, and he said he's going to do them. I think it's the thought of chaos, though, and not knowing what's going to happen next for hundreds of thousands of people that is a concern. Adolf, let me ask you, what do you think a Trump presidency owes Michigan or should be looking at to Michigan to say, you know what, we're going to step in and help here and there because the vote was delivered for us?
Well, they voted for him. He owed them nothing. Listen, immigration, Hamtramck, Dearborn, they're going to feel the brunt of the pain. He's going to kick a lot of them out. And I disagree when you say all these criminals coming here. We got more American-born criminals that live right down the street from you, me, and everybody else. And mostly, I support immigration. We need new folks to come into our country. This is what made our country great. And I wish Detroit would reach out and get some of these folks that want to come here. Well, I agree. This is the greatest country in the world. People want to come here, and not all criminals. Listen, the last time we had criminals come here is when Jimmy Carter told Cuba you can send whatever, and Castro cleaned out his jails.
Caitlin, did you want to rebut real quick?
Well, and I agree there needs to be reform in the system so that we can legally take in as many people as want to come here and be part of this great country. I totally agree. But, why do we need to accept criminals coming to our country that, we don't
accept
need to
Elon Musk. He came here. He came here. He was an illegal alien.
That could be a topic for another show. Jill, I want to ask you this. I came across the column and the headline was really interesting to me. And it said, resist or coexist. What is the Democratic strategy now? I mean, when we looked at the inauguration of President Trump in 2017 and the days that followed and hundreds of thousands of people, women specifically, marching on Washington saying we are going to resist. What is the Democratic strategy now to coexist with a Trump administration?
Sure. Well, we saw our own governor, I think, say yesterday she'll work with Donald Donald Trump to do anything to solve problems or make progress for our people. And so my colleague and friend here, sometimes colleague, says that we have to see, right, what this next Trump presidency is like. But we do disagree very seriously on so many issues. He won an election. It doesn't mean that people lose their voice or their right to peacefully protest, raise their voices, and fight for the laws that they want. So we're probably going to end up seeing a little bit of both. But I do think that Democratic leaders have messaged very strongly that they want to work with the president for the good of our nation.
Dennis, Adolph was like, we're owed nothing. We voted for him, and the president doesn't owe Michigan anything. Do you think that he does?
Well, I certainly do. I mean, we've delivered twice now for him. This is the place that he came for his last presidential rally. So I mean,
and what would delivering look like?
Well, I think there are two ways of delivering. One is delivering for the Michigan GOP, because we have an open election in 26. I think coming out strong for a candidate that could be successful and be a partner with him in Michigan would be fantastic. But I do think when we talk about something as simple as extending his 2017 tax cuts and providing tax relief for the citizens of Michigan, that's something that he, especially with controlling both members of Congress or the Senate and the House, that's something he can deliver on. It's something he promised. So go ahead and do it.
The inauguration's been moved into the Capitol Rotunda inside for the first time since 1985, which I think is really interesting. What are you going to be watching for on Monday?
Well, just, his interaction. I think this will be, he came as a newcomer his last term, and now he somewhat knows the ropes. Obviously, his interaction between him and Melania and his family, and just kind of, seeing how the whole country reacts. I mean, it's going to be a historic event. Having this separated two terms of a president doesn't happen very often, and so I'm looking forward to it. I think hopefully it will be a good day for everybody, and we can put some of the past behind us. But I'm sure it will bring up some memories of, the last time we saw him kind of in the Capitol and just how much has happened in the past 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, when we say the past 4 years, a lot has happened. Okay, in the last minute that we have left, where are we going to go if TikTok is banned? Adolph, I'm going to start with you. Where are you going to be scrolling? Where will you doom scroll?
I hope it goes away, never comes back. I don't look at TikTok.
Dennis, where will I see all my cat videos and dancing videos?
I make sure that if I'm dancing, there's no phones around.
Oh, now that's a challenge. That's a challenge for me. Jill, so many people tell me that they get their news from TikTok. They get a lot of their information from there. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, well, my thoughts are, and I hate to make predictions, but we'll probably see TikTok.
In some form.
At
In some
point.
form.
Right, that somebody in the United States of America is going to put the money together to make sure TikTok is here.
It says because the algorithm is addictive.
At Martin Luther King birthday, it's ironic that we got a president that I think, if Martin Luther King was alive, probably try to lock him up.
We're going to have to end it on that note. Thank you so much for being with me. Adolph, Caitlin, Dennis, Jill, thanks for being with me. And thank you for being with me. Again, you can see all the inauguration coverage tomorrow right here on Local 4. For all of us at Flashpoint, I'm Christy McDonald. We'll see you next week.